today on the channel. They put it all on the line for their career.
I'm gonna call you every day until I get a show, bro.
With music entirely out of left field.
The chorus was pull the tapeworm out of my ass.
And fought an uphill battle from the get-go.
We will never play this band on our station. Never.
Slowly, they became an underground phenomenon.
Every channel in LA had live footage of the riots. All of a sudden, it was like LA riots. And it was like, what caused this? And then the band's name is being said over and over and over.
And angered quite a few people along the way.
It wasn't the most popular thing to tell a bunch of Americans that you're wrong.
How did they get signed? Why were they so controversial? And what ultimately stopped them in their tracks? In this video, we'll cover the story of Serj Tankian, Darren Malakian, Shavo Odagian, and John Dolmayan, from their early beginnings to their indefinite break. This is System of a Down.
Los Angeles is always looked at Hollywood, you know, with the movie stars and swimming pools, like glamour, glitz, you know. But if you live there and you live in the areas that we lived in, you see poverty, you see hookers on the streets just standing there, no one saying nothing. Drugs, gangs, you see all these things, and you have to fight to not have it affect your life.
Shavo Odagian was just 5 years old when his family moved from his hometown of Yerevan, Armenia, to Los Angeles, California.
Armenians do stick together. We are small people in this world. Our country is very little, so when you meet another Armenian, it's a special thing because there aren't too many around.
By the time he picked up the guitar, Shavo found like-minded people who shared his roots.
We all met sort of jamming through other bands at studios, and the coincidence is that three of us went to the same elementary school at different times, and we were all rehearsing in Burbank, and it was a studio, and we all met, and we were like, hey, weren't you that guy that went to that school? Yeah.
We were sharing space with another band, and they had brought in Darren as a guitarist.
But I ended up jamming with them a lot. You know, I'd rehearse with my band, and then if they came in, I would stick around and I would play guitar with them.
And he started playing something, and I started singing, and then he harmonized, and I think we both stopped and looked at each other because that harmony was something I had never heard.
Yeah.
Our voices harmonized in a very, very unique fashion.
Yes.
And him and I got to know each other, and I realized he was 16, you know, and I was probably like early 20s. And I realized how dedicated he is to music, how serious he was to music.
I didn't have a job. I didn't have shit. And then you're telling your mom, I'm gonna be a musician. And these are two artists that have been struggling artists their whole life, so they know what the artist life is, right?
Yeah.
So they were worried. Anyway, this happened, and me and him meet. We stick with the bass player from my other band, but we meet this guy who's this Hawaiian drummer, who's some tall guy that played like a beast. His name was Domingo. That's when we became Soil.
And they asked me if I would manage them. And
Really?
Yeah, because they're like, you know how to talk, man. You do this well. Because I'm a go-getter. If I need something, I get it done, right? And so I said, sure, I love your music. It's great. And it was just kind of, imagine the music was like 4 or 5 System of a Down songs in one. Very progressive, no song format, really. It was just like riff after riff after riff.
Anyway, we played that one gig. Domingo was from Hawaii. He decided, I guess he had a kid or something, and he moved back to Hawaii.
What went down is the bass player, who was my friend, didn't work out between them, and so they wanted to switch them with me, and I didn't want to do that. I was like, I'm not taking your spot. It's like taking your ex-girlfriend kind of thing. You know? So long story short, when they invited me over to Serj's house to tell me this, I said, you know, I feel weird doing that. Why don't we just start a new band?
I brought Andy in, and we're like, let's jam with Andy, guys. And, you know, everyone kind of knew Andy, but we were a little hesitant because we had our issues.
Regardless, drummer Andy Khachaturian completed the new band's lineup, and together they decided on a new name.
It was a poem that Darren wrote, and it was called Victims of a Down. And it just didn't rub me right, you know, the victims, you know. I was like, I don't want to be a victim. So then he went back, and I told him, like, that's the reason. I just don't want to be a victim. And what if we get big ever, I said, people are going to yell victim, you know. And I don't want to be that, you know. So He came back with System, and I was like, done.
Once they had a name, they made sure everyone around them knew about it.
Even before we had any shows, we'd walk around. I'd go to, copy place, make hundreds of little flyers with our name on it, and just say coming soon, System of a Down.
Meanwhile, Serge, who was a bit older than his bandmates, was already deep into a different career.
I wasn't in my 20s, I was in my teens. So I had been in the jewelry industry, the shoe industry. I had owned a software company. I went to university. I had this 1,000 square foot warehouse I was renting, and I had my little software business running out of it, a little hangout space, a futon that converted into a bed in case I needed to crash there. And the rest of the space we made into the band's, kind of rehearsal space.
So we'd invite them over, the Armenians and the friends, and they would watch us play on Fridays. So it was kind of, we were getting ready to play a show.
And Shavo at the time, our bassist, was very instrumental in kind of hassling these promoters and calling them.
So after every call, I would hang up and try the Roxy or the Whiskey or the Troubadour or the Viper Room.
Hey, Troubadour, this is Shavo from something. What? You called us yesterday? I know I'm going to call you every day until I get a show, bro.
Do you have a demo tape? And I would say no, because we couldn't afford at the time. So I would just hound them daily. I would call the same people every day. And because it was a catch-22. We didn't have a demo, so you can't get a show. You can't get a show, you can't get a demo because there's no money, right?
Right.
So one day, one of the guys at the Roxy was like sick of me and said, here's the guy's number. His name is Brian Markovich. He'll give you a show. Just sell some tickets.
Dude said, well, I don't know who you are. Can you sell tickets? They gave me 75 tickets to sell, and we sold like 150 of them.
And they were like, who the fuck are these guys? Like, how could they sell 100? It's pay to play, LA, and it was at the Roxy of all places.
So he put us on this show. It was May 28th, 1995. And he said it was 7 bands, 6 ska bands, and us. There was like 20, 30 people for each of those other bands. And then we went up, 20-minute set. And the place exploded with crazy Armenians and friends and like the flag and all this chaos. And then we got off and everybody left. So after that, it was easy. We got shows. Didn't have to sell any more tickets. And once we had a demo, I would pass that demo around in places.
When we first got approached from actually Shavo, brought us his demo. I would say 95. There's the baby right there. That's the first puppy. And it just pretty much, it just went out of the store. There was a great following. Street promotion was heavy. And that's like the most important thing.
People that are from LA or live in LA now, if they stumble onto a band by accident, even if they're unsigned, I mean, they will do what it takes for this band to get big. I mean, you can go in front of any club that has bands play, and you leave, and there are 12 different kids out there with flyers to come see a band.
After the first demo came a second and a third, all heavily promoted by the band's own fanbase, which continued to grow steadily. But despite the momentum they'd built, one issue kept holding them back.
I think that slowly but surely they realized they had a very talented drummer, but personality-wise, it wasn't working. My band was sharing rehearsal space with System. The reason why is we were both broke. Neither of us had money. It was getting tougher. It was getting tougher living in the garage, explaining to my parents that this is what it's going to be, and then you get to like 24 years old and you haven't done anything and you haven't made $1 playing music, and it starts to become really daunting. Because at 24, you start thinking, okay, I have a girlfriend, I'm going to marry her, and all of these things that you think about. And then it's like, well, how am I going to support these people? And I was in a band that didn't have a singer for over 2 years. And we would rehearse 7 days a week. So within like 1 year, hey, John, what if we get rid of this guy, and would you be interested? And I said, no, I wouldn't be interested. First of all, the guy's my friend, Secondly, I have a band. I'm gonna leave my band for you. I like you guys, you're great, but I'm happy where I am. But then Andy broke his hand.
Shavo and I were like at our pot dealer's house, and Shavo goes to me, hey, guess what? What? Andy broke his arm. He punched a wall and he broke all the bones in his arm. And I looked at Shavo and I was like, call John.
In 1997, with John Dolmayan now in the ranks, the band opted to record yet another demo, this time hoping it would land in the hands of record companies.
Still, we weren't getting any offers being signed because people were asking us, well, you know, they get you guys here, but who's gonna get you in fucking Texas? Who's gonna get you in places where they don't know what Armenian is? And then you guys are playing this like wacky shit. And at that time, the labels had power, you know, like there was no Spotify or anything like this.
And we're not going to ask them like, hey, give us a deal, because that looks like we're thirsty and hungry. We were, but we didn't want to seem like we're desperate, you know? Yeah. We saw other bands getting picked up, but these guys were never making a move, you know? We were just like this band that got stuck, you know? We're like, fuck, everyone's getting picked up. All these bands that we were playing with, they're like signed by Geffen. One guy signed by Universal, this, that, whatever.
Rick came along and saw us at the Viper Room. We had a few labels that would like, you know, show up to our shows, but weren't really putting anything on the table. Rick came in, saw us at the Viper Room, thought it was funny.
And I remember watching the show and just laughing. I laughed the whole time. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen, but in a good way. It wasn't like laughing like, what a joke. It was just so over the top.
Dude, he pulled us. It was at the Viper Room, and we went outside because he wanted to talk to us after the show. We're like, fuck, dude, Rick Rubin wants to talk to us. And he's like, yeah, I want this. I'm like, what? You already want this? He just goes, yeah, man, I don't need any more of this. I love what I saw.
So then when Rick got interested, those other labels that were kind of dipping their feet, they got interested. Then we had a bidding war. There was a subsidiary from off Universal called Cherry Music. And this lady ran it. Her name was Jolene Cherry. And her and her team would wine and dine us and take us to dinner, and so they made us believe like, you guys should come with us, and we have Universal, and we were like, okay, we were gonna be a Universal band.
Despite the band's deep admiration for Rubin as a producer, his label, American Records, was now falling short of other offers, and the band was closing in on a deal.
We went to New York, we went to the Universal offices, and they had this whole layout for us. Every employee there was there to greet us and show us, this is your new home. So happy to have you. And we went in there and we saw there was pictures of like, they had no rock act. They were brand new label. They had Erykah Badu, and the closest thing they had to us was the ska band at that time called Real Big Fish. And we went in there and we talked to them, and we left there. We got into the elevator and we said, these people don't know anything about our kind of music. We're not sure these people are going to be able to know what to do with us. And we got into the elevator. By the time the elevator got back down on the floor, each one of us was thinking the exact same thing. And we turned to each other and said, we gotta call Rick.
This video was made by humans. If you prefer that over AI-generated content and don't mind the funny accent, then you're at the right place. As you might expect though, making these videos takes a lot of time and effort. But with your help, we'll be able to hire more writers, editors, and other staff, which will help us produce more videos on the greatest bands out there. If you'd like, you can chip in via Patreon or by becoming a member right here on YouTube. Just follow the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. I appreciate your support, and now back to the video. In late 1997, System of a Down went into Sound City Studios in Los Angeles, along with Rick Rubin as co-producer and a studio engineer by the name of Sylvia Massey, who seemed to be on board with the band's antics from the get-go.
Sylvia and the band dreamt up a bewildering range of recording techniques, particularly for Serge's vocals. These included hanging the singer upside down, recording him in the street, the hall, and the toilet.
Whereas Rubin took up a bit of a different role.
Rick comes at you with, well, why are we doing that? Or he makes you kind of look within yourself. He's not the guy that's going to turn the knobs and set your guitar tone. Rick's not that guy. Rick is kind of like your psychologist.
He'll come in and he'll say, what about if you like do this? And that's like really small, like maybe like double up the chorus, you know? That we didn't, you know, we might have thought of and then said, it'll be too long, let's not do it. In the studio, he'll be like, double up the chorus. He'll be like, okay, let's try it. We'll try it, and it'll be like it'll make the song complete.
In May of 1998, ahead of the album launch, the band released its first single. And in June, they released their debut album, simply titled System of a Down. Immediately, they were lumped up with other musicians.
You know, at the time we were coming up, Limp Bizkit was big, Korn was big, that stuff was just happening. We fit into that world, but also didn't.
The program director at K-Rock, which was the premier station that would play that kind of music.
The biggest radio station in the country, the one that kind of dictates to the world what's played on the radio, is K-Rock.
And they're an LA band, and it's an LA station. They said, we will never play this band on our station. Never. And again, a year later, #1 requested group on the station.
So for the first record, we just toured, built a proper base.
Besides the touring, the band started popping up in popular media everywhere.
My next guest this evening hail from Los Angeles, and they're here to perform a song from their new self-titled album. Please welcome System of a Down.
Aside from Sugar and Spiders, which were moderately successful, the album included tracks covering a wide range of themes such as war, drugs, and religion, and one track in particular about a shared generational trauma.
We have a song called Pluck, which stands for Politically Lying, Unholy, Cowardly Killers.
I was born in Beirut, Lebanon. Like a lot of Armenians, we lost many of our family during the genocide.
To us, it's not a political issue so much as a personal issue. You know, we all have family that have perished, and grandfather, grandmother survivors.
The Lebanese Armenians came here because there was war at that time in their country. Persian Armenians came here because the Ayatollah took over at some point, 79. Iraq Armenians, Saddam. So everyone was kind of coming here for a better life.
Their political tendencies were also expressed in the album's cover, which resembled a German poster from 1928, meant as a response to fascism. The album received praise from fans and critics alike.
And the best international live act is System of a Down.
I want to thank Kerrang and the rest of my band and everybody here. Thank you very much. I didn't think we'd win.
Get drunk and naked!
As the album cycle was winding down, the band was offered a tour with one of the biggest metal acts in the world in Iron Maiden. But enticing as it was, the band decided it was time to take it to the next level. In March 2001, Rubin and his favorite group of misfits went into Cello Studios in Hollywood to work on System of a Down's sophomore record.
What would you say was different about this album than the first album?
Vocal harmonies.
During pre-production, we thought Ariel's was perfect. Rick was like, "It's missing something. You know that riff that goes throughout the song? How come you don't play that heavy?" The sessions saw the band experiment with more than just the standard rock instrumentation.
There are strings, piano, banjo, sitars, mandolins.
Instruments we don't know what they mean.
Bottles.
Now that's a piece of... Oh my god, that's fucking dope! Yeah, but
Next came the lyrics, which, as it turned out, there was no shortage of.
And sometimes there were a lot of words, and I had to get them in there because as someone who wrote poetry, it was important to get the words in there. So I wasn't thinking, does this sound right to someone singing? I was more like, I gotta get these words in there. It doesn't matter how fast I go. Wake up! Wake up! Run, rush, and put a little makeup! I discuss the fade away the shake up! Why'd you leave the keys up on the table?
I remember playing this for Tom Morello and him saying, "That's crazy person's music."
The singer did, however, run into the occasional writer's block.
Serge, the lyric writer, the singer, lyric writer, didn't have words for this one part of the song. And we were sitting in the library in my old house, and he said, I don't have words for this, and we were finishing. It's like, okay, any ideas? He's like, he didn't have any ideas. And I said, okay, pick a book off the wall. I picked a book randomly off the wall. I said, open it to any page. Tell me the first phrase you see. He opened it. First phrase he sees. That's what's in the song, and it's a high point in the song. It's incredible.
And gradually, more lyrics came from another member.
See, I'm not sure the verse matches what my lyrics are saying, but the lyrics for me was how, people judge people on how they die. Like, for example, if you died of cancer, poor guy. But if you died of a drug overdose, you had it coming. It's like how people are judgmental. I cry when angels deserve to die. It's like how people are judgmental even in someone's death.
The song, which originally had a different name, had some trouble going through the label.
We had to pick and choose our battles. We couldn't battle everything, That's why in the beginning of it, you hear Roll Suicide. Because it was always called Suicide, never Chop Suey. Chop Suey is suicide chopped in half.
Rolling Suicide.
For me, metal, if it gets too hard, it gets so funny to me. It's kind of like horror movies, right? If it gets too crazy, it's so over the top, I start laughing. So I remember one time when we wrote the song Bounce. Before Bounce, the lyrics were completely different. I wanted to write a very heavy metal song about pajamas, silk pajamas, which is totally Dada-esque, right? Like something Zappa would do. And they both look at me like with scorn. And they're like, no, bro, you're not going to make us look like that. Like that kind of a thing. So there was always this attitude, don't fuck with the metal.
Do you remember the drama over the Tapeworm song?
Yes!
The chorus was, pull the tapeworm out of my ass, right? Darren and Chavo didn't like my ass, right? They were like, no, that doesn't sound cool. That sounds bad. That sounds vulnerable or whatever it was. And I'm like, well, what I'm trying to say is philosophical. Like, take this negativity out of me or whatever at the time I was trying to portray. And they're like, no, that's not cool. We don't want to be in a band where it's your, take.
Felt like it seemed like the band could have broke up over the lyric. Like it was so extreme.
And all we had to do is change it to your.
Pull the tapeworm out of your ass.
Unfortunately, some arguments were not as easily settled. There was that not knowing what mood everyone's going to be in every night. There was the psychological aspect to it, like here I go from being on the road, kind of sick of everything, and now I have to go back to the studio. I think John said something about my personal life, and I swung my guitar at him. He swung at me, then an elbow hit my mouth, and I took a microphone stand and hit him in the head. There may have been a murder that day if 2 other band members didn't come to that person's aid. We were in 2 adjoining hospital beds getting our stitches. Regardless, in the week after their recovery, they were able to make progress on a song that was put aside for a long time. Initially brought in by Chavo, the song was tentatively called Version 7.0.
And then Darren had another part to another song, and it kind of went home, put them together, and like 2 months later they brought it back. And then I was trying to figure out a beat for it because it was better, right? Like it felt like it had something. And I couldn't think of anything. And then Chavo was like, well, why don't you kind of do this? And I was like, Shav, let me go through my process here, But he kept irritating me. So I was like, whoa, like this? And then that was the beat. He goes, yeah, like that. And I don't even think he wanted that. Later he said, yeah, that's what I meant. Sure, it's what you meant.
Come August 2001, and with the new record planned for the following month, the band released its first single off the album and a music video to boot.
Chop Suey comes out. Next thing you know, we're walking in the malls and kids recognize us. That that life changed after that, I guess you can say.
As a thank you to the fans, the band announced a special live show just one day before the release.
We were going to hold a live show behind the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood. There was like a huge parking lot. So, and we were going to do a free show. So there were people there camped out from the day before.
And we expected around 35 to 5,000 people. 10 to 15,000 people showed up. Wow. Where it was like the streets were, but you know what it was? It's like we had our boy Stryker on K-Rock going, free show if you want to go see System of a Down play in Hollywood, go. Like all day he was pumping it.
And then apparently, the fire marshal closed it down because there were too many people.
Right.
And they wouldn't let us play the show. We were there.
There was just not enough cops or security to like handle 15,000 people.
And I said, well, what if we go at least announce and play a few shows and say, it's closed down, so we can't really finish the show. We'll do another show later for you all. They said, no, you can't do that. The police will arrest you if you try to go to the stage. And we're like, okay, well, are they going to announce that, Like nobody announced. So I called the guys over and I said, let's get arrested even better. Like, fuck it, right? Let's do this. And then my lawyer came in and was like, everyone here is going to sue you after too. And I'm like, yeah, maybe not.
We had this big ass banner on the wall, like 100-foot banner, said System. And I told the fire marshal and John, me and John were like right face to face going, dude, these kids are not going to be happy. They've been waiting since last night, some of them. You just tell them they're not playing. Why don't we just get up and say, yo, we can play like 5 songs and that's it. Just play 4 or 5 songs and be done, bro. Nope, you guys got to get out of here.
It just seemed like, where's the band? A half hour goes by, 40 minutes, people standing there in front of the stage chanting. I would think this would pull them out. Slowly but surely, stuff started just coming off the stage and people started realizing, you know what? I don't think this free show is going to happen.
They put us in these vans and shipped us out. And as we were leaving, I saw the banner drop. And when the banner dropped, chaos.
Piled up monitors started being ripped down off the stage. You had monitors just landing into crowds of people. Then you had the people starting to take the monitors and run off with, 3 people carrying a monitor back to their car or wherever they tried to take it.
They were zooming in to like cars carrying gear, like pickup trucks with like my cabinet in the back. Like they're stealing now. Yeah. It's like I'm seeing people I know with like drum heads or drums like running down the street, like people I know from shows, And I even saw a pipe hit one of my guys. They were swinging with pipes and shit. It was crazy, bro. They were throwing hammers and rocks and all the barricades were getting thrown on each other. It was nuts, bro. It was like chaos.
And then they blamed it on us, saying the band never showed up.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I watched the whole thing go down on the news. It was like live. It was like every channel in LA had live footage of the riots. All of a sudden, it was like LA riots. And it was like, what caused this? And then the band's name is being said over and over and over. And the album's dropping the next day, So that was the best marketing we could have ever gotten, ever. Publicity. There's nothing like that. Like we couldn't have paid for marketing like that.
On September 4th, 2001, System of a Down released their sophomore record, titled Toxicity. The album skyrocketed in sales on its first week, debuting at number 1 on the American and Canadian charts.
Though at the time, instead of like, you would think as artists, we're like, wow, this is like huge, this is amazing, this is changing our lives. Like, we weren't worried about that, we were stressed out. And the reason we were stressed out is a number of reasons. It coincided with 9/11.
At this time, the internet was kind of a brand new thing. Fans would link 9/11 to our lyrics, like Aerials in the Sky and Self-Righteous Suicide, and song titles like Jet Pilot. People thought we wrote this shit about shit that hadn't happened yet, like we were prophets.
And among other things, I had written an article called Understanding Oil.
The article, which was posted to the band's website just 2 days after 9/11, suggested that the attacks were the result of US foreign policy in the Middle East.
I remember the band got me in a room and they're like, what are you doing? Are you trying to get us killed? I'm like, but it's the truth. And they're like, yeah, so what? Like, you're a smart guy. What are you doing? So this is the release of the record for me. The stress, this anguish, seeing our fans beaten up by clubs on policemen
Cops
with
on horses.
Cops on horses, and then death threats and all sorts of shit from the statement I made and had to go on Howard Stern and defend my words, if you will.
That you took down your statement off your website. Why take it down if you don't think it's hurtful or painful to anybody?
Because I think it was the wrong timing. It's a time of mourning, and I think it's more important to address those issues and issues of family, and things can always be said.
Trent, go ahead.
Oh, this guy is not even worthy of airtime. System of a Down sucks. I think they're exploiting the cause just to create some controversy around the band and bring it some attention to them because they've had a difficult time pushing their music for the past 2 years. And they always say, F the government and the killers in your backyard. It's nothing new. They're following the same footsteps of Rage Against the Machine. They're these political internal commies.
Other than the heat from their political statements, the band suffered a major blow when the lyrics to Chop Suey were deemed inappropriate for radio in the aftermath of the attacks. Thus, the song was banned on the majority of stations in the US. Thankfully, the band still enjoyed near-constant airplay for both Aerials and Toxicity. Not long after the release, the band went on tour of the United States with Slipknot. Despite the tumultuous times, the tour went relatively smooth, perhaps with the exception of one incident.
Every time we walked down, we get hassled by security, so it really just wasn't worth our time. Me and him have a tendency to cause a ruckus or, have problems with security.
In October, Odagian was allegedly assaulted and forcibly dragged out of a show by security guards in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The two parties exchanged accusations in what later turned into a lawsuit, but the ordeal was not publicized further. Regardless, the band carried out the tour to its very last date.
It was emotional. I remember it was in Dallas.
Ozfest?
Yeah, it was an Ozfest. It was in Dallas, and Chavo got all teary-eyed because he's like, "We're never gonna get on stage again."
And while planning to take a long break after Toxicity, the band suddenly found themselves with an expanded repertoire. In late 2001, the band discovered that someone had leaked demo tracks from their Toxicity sessions onto file-sharing platforms. The material spread like wildfire, and before they had time to respond, unauthorized CDs were being sold to fans under the name Toxicity 2. With how new the internet was, the band was unsure how to deal with the situation. It's not about the money really, it's that the songs being downloaded weren't finished. It was so frustrating, we had lost control of our own songs. But before long, a plan started to come together.
I think we were going through something with Sony, and we said, I bet you we can drop something right now, and we don't have to put an album cover, we don't have to make a video, and it'll still go platinum. And it was just I think it was like a dare or a joke. Because I had just read the Abby Hoffman book, Steal This Book.
Similar to the band's approach, Steal This Book was about counterculture and the promotion of political change. This inspired the band to call their new collection of previously stolen material Steal This Album.
What we did with Steal This Album was those songs we felt like weren't as good as maybe the ones on Toxicity, but then somebody leaked them, and they were leaked in a way that we're like, well, we didn't want them that way, so what we did was go back in the studio and make them as good as what should have been on Toxicity.
He got his hands on it, we arranged it a certain way, and I wrote everything, it's all my handwriting on there.
Is it really?
Yeah, I just kind of wrote everything out and said, here guys.
I still got it.
And gave it to Sony with no cover.
Playing into the joke, the label agreed to release the album, which resembled a burnable CD written on with a marker, attempting to beat the bootleggers at their own game. The first single, which was released 1 month ahead of the album, was called Inner Vision.
I need to seek my inner vision.
And in November 2002, the band released Steal This Album. While the album did in fact go platinum, it also inadvertently earned the reputation of a B-side compilation, a notion that the band had to work hard to dispel.
Steel was never an outtake record. It still isn't. It's one of my favorite records.
And we get letters from fans. I mean, we as a band consider Steel to be one of our records, one of our albums, the one that came after Toxicity. And mostly the drum tracks were from the Toxicity takes. There's a mess of like guitars, almost all the vocals are from brand new sessions. Me and Serge took 2 months in the studio to do Steel.
When we put out Steel, they wanted us to do like singles and videos from that, and we're like, if we're gonna do any video, we're gonna do Boom, because that's when the protests were happening.
Being the only music video the band agreed to shoot, Boom was the band's way of protesting the war in Iraq.
The label was against it, and all these people were against it. We had to fight for it, and it was at a time where, you know, living in America, it wasn't the most popular thing to tell a bunch of Americans that you're wrong.
These were not popular opinions. The Zach De La Rocas, the Serge Tonkins, these were not the popular opinions.
We're here in LA, we're doing an anti-war protest.
We're a band that's known for our views as well as our music, and it's about time that we did something to show that we actually give a shit about this planet.
It's a bunch of people gathering to make their voices heard. To let the administration know that this is not a just war, this is not something that we all believe in here.
Every time you drop the bomb, you kill the god your child has born.
For Serge, the worry for innocent people on the other side arose from his own experiences in Lebanon.
I remember ducking in our bedroom with my brother because of the bombs falling and school was closed. And that really made a huge impression on me as a child. It's a terrorizing feeling hearing bombs drop. They feel random and they terrorize the population. And if you've ever been in that situation of hearing bombs drop, you'd be very reluctant to order your own government or anyone to do that.
Come 2004, the band finally went into the studio again, with Darren now taking an even more dominant role than before.
I always envisioned, even on the first record, that as the band would go along, I would be singing more, and that would be part of the evolution of the band.
He used to always sing, but it's not something that we've, like he hasn't sang a lot on the records, and now he's singing lead.
I brought in Lost in Hollywood, and I only had brought in the first part of the song. Rick looked at me, and all he said to me was, "It's not finished." And I was like, "It's not finished." I thought it was finished, you know? But he made me think about it. And I went home that night, and I wrote that part of the song.
I was standing on the wall, feeling 10 feet tall.
And then there's another song that came on a later album called Revenga, and I did like a Latin beat, and I'm doing this like crazy drum part on it in the middle. But the Latin beat, when I came up with it, it was so opposite of what everybody thought it should be that Serge didn't really say anything, but Darren and Shaba were like, "Man, that's terrible. We hate that beat." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But see, they're stoners, and I'm not, right? So I know they're gonna forget. So I just played like a different beat, more like straightforward for a week, and then I brought my Latin beat back. They didn't know the difference, you know? So a couple months later, we brought Rick in, and we played him that, and Rick's sitting there, you know, like he was much heavier back then. So he kind of like really into the couch, you know? And he's sitting there, and, you know, I start playing the, you know, dun 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 dun.
My sweet revenge will be yours for the taking. It's in the making.
And his eyes lit up. What the hell's going on here? Rick's dancing. He never did anything like that before, right? And he's like, "That's the best beat you've ever come up with," and said something like that. And then, of course, Shaba and Darren were like, "Yeah, we loved it from day one." I'm like, "Okay, sure you did."
With the sessions generating an overflow of songs yet again, the band decided to compile a proper double album. The first part, entitled Mesmerize, was set to release in May 2005. But already in March, fans got a first taste.
You know, a song like BYOB, like I showed you earlier, went from like metal to this fucking P-Funk chorus. back to metal, into punk rock. Like, they're very experimental songs. I wrote that song inside out. That little middle where it's blast off, it's party time. I had written that first. And it was this little punk song that I had written, and you know, why don't presidents fight the war, and it's all that. And then later on, I wrote the opening riff and, you know, the whole verse, and then going into that funkadelic kind of chorus. And I was like, you know what, that punk song that I wrote like about a year ago, that might work as a bridge now. And so I took the whole song and made it into a bridge.
Wow, okay.
And that's how you got BYOB.
The song was a criticism of the way ruling elites conduct warfare.
It's not necessarily about just what's going on in Iraq. You know, both sides of this war, if you want to call it, send their poor to do the dying, whether it's the people that are fighting for freedom or the people who are fighting for Allah. You know what I mean? It's not like your rich princes going to war from Saudi Arabia. It's usually the poor, you know, people who have, you know, felt a lot of the suffering from that region. And same with the United States. It's not, you know, the upper class that's going to fight these wars. It's usually the simple people, you know, the simple everyday people.
Why don't presidents fight the war? Why do they always send the poor? Why don't presidents fight the war? Why do they always send the poor?
Upon release, Mesmerize debuted at #1 in numerous countries, and the 36-minute-long ride was universally acclaimed by critics. After BYOB, a second single was soon to follow. After only a few months of touring in support of Mesmerize, the second part of the double album was starting to be teased through the release of its title song. On November 22nd, Hypnotize was officially released, together with a bit of clever packaging.
We feel both albums are connected and they're really one album. So actually when you get both albums, they will fit together like a puzzle. Okay. You know, and then you'll have one double CD.
Just like its predecessor, Hypnotize debuted at #1, scoring the band the extremely rare feat of having two such debuts in the same year. Despite the popularity of the double album, the band seemed to brush off any form of recognition by the music industry, even with their 2006 Grammy Award win for BYOB.
For us, it felt like we didn't want or need someone else to pat us on the back and say you're doing good kind of thing. It just felt very anti-punk rock, to be honest.
Instead, the band plowed forward with another music video of Hypnotize.
Such a lonely day, and it's mine.
And rounded off with one last single.
Every time I look in your eyes, every day I'm watching you die.
But while their commercial efforts were working like clockwork, and their latest achievement seemed almost easy, they began to struggle with a whole different beast. In 2006, some of the band's internal contentions, dating back to the last recording sessions, began to surface.
But it was, you know, an interesting time because just the dynamic in the band had changed.
I felt like there was something wrong with this puzzle that I don't think we could solve.
Well, Serge's heart wasn't into it the same way.
As he became a better lyricist and he starting to write more ideas down for choruses especially and stuff like that, at that time I became a better instrumentalist, so I started bringing in music. As I started to grow as an artist and he started to grow, we started encroaching on each other's space, you know, in a way. But I was okay with that because I think when you have an idea for a song, if you also have the lyrical concept for it, I'm totally open to that. But over time, I wanted that same love and respect back for my musical input.
The frontman, frustrated with the imposed limit on his creative expression, chose to share his own songs through other means.
That wasn't my choice to necessarily get away from the System of a Down stuff. But when I knew Serge was going to do a solo project, I knew that, you know, there was going to be no System of a Down for a pretty good time.
In May, the band announced they would go on an indefinite hiatus. Insisting they weren't breaking up, the band committed to play an entire Ozfest tour, spanning 27 dates across North America. However, on the very first date of the tour, things turned ugly. According to various reports, the band members arrived at the venue in separate tour buses. During the show, Darren seemed to be struggling to keep up with the rest of the band, and had improvised some of the lyrics. Finally, while playing Lonely Day, Darren was reportedly looking at Serge when he sang, "Such a lonely day, hanging out with the band. This motherfucker I can't stand."
The thing is, we really get along as friends, and we always have as friends. But then when band politics comes into the thing, that's when the resentments come in.
We had problems with that, because Serge is very outspoken, and he has one way of thinking. Some things we agree with, the rest of the band, and some things we don't. A lot of people listen to System of a Down, and they're only getting one perspective, and it's a perspective I don't agree with.
With all of their individual voices vying for their own space within System of a Down, often clashing outright, the friction was unavoidable. And as Darren Malakian explained, the only thing we really have in common is that we are Armenian. Over their relatively short recording career, and in the face of endless controversy, System of a Down managed to stay true to their principles and committed to their own message.
Maybe we put out Toxicity and you came to me and said, wow, this record really sucks. I'd still like it.
That's great.
If you start making decisions based on what you think they'll like, you're going to water it down. The best version of it is the real version. And then some people love it and some people hate it, and it's okay.
And sometimes being true to yourself means moving on.
A relationship with a woman is not simple, and that's with one other person. Imagine being with the same sex, 3 other people minus the sex, you know what I mean? I mean, it's the same thing. We're in a relationship and we have to cater to each other's see what's happening right there?
I personally don't think bands should exist forever, to be honest with you, because I think it's a negative thing to art, unless they're able to break those walls and be able to present themselves differently enough.
I'm gonna quit the band after this interview.
And while their differences ultimately tore them apart, it is that combination of personalities that allowed for everything to happen.
I just look at us as kind of 4 nerds, like each of us in the band has our own little quirky, nerdy personality. And then you go out there and together it's like Voltron, we come together and it's something else. It's not something that you can anticipate. And we have no idea that any of that stuff's going to happen. How could we?
So what happened to the members of System of a Down beyond this point? Well, that's a story for another time. And if you'd like to hear it, then make sure to subscribe and stay updated for future videos. Also, if you like this video, you might like our video series on the history of Pantera. My name is Raz, and from myself and the team, thank you for watching. Until next time.
It's also been about 3 years since your last record came out. Is that part of the reason why this is a double album, or did you just come out with so much material that it had to be split up?
Fellatio.